20 years. That's how long it had been since Sarah last held a paintbrush with intention. The easel in her spare room had become a glorified coat rack, the paints dried to useless lumps, the canvases gathering dust like forgotten dreams. She used to paint like she breathed, naturally, necessarily, joyfully. But life happened. Career demands, family responsibilities, the relentless pace of adulting slowly squeezed out the space for what once felt essential. The voice that whispered, "You're not good enough anyway," grew louder than the one that used to sing while she painted. What happens when the very technology that seems to threaten human creativity becomes the key to unlocking it again? When artificial intelligence doesn't replace the artist's soul, but helps her remember where she left it. Sarah's story is about to unfold, a journey back to herself, guided by an unexpected digital companion. There's a particular kind of grief that comes with abandoning a part of yourself. Not the sharp pain of sudden loss, but the dull ache of slow forgetting. Sarah felt it most acutely in unexpected moments. When sunlight hit a wall just so, when she noticed the way shadows fell across her kitchen table, when colors seemed to call out to her from the world around her. She had become successful in ways that mattered to the world. Stable career, comfortable life, responsibilities met. But success, she was learning, could be its own kind of prison when it came at the cost of what made you feel most alive. The creative self doesn't die when neglected. It goes into hibernation. It waits, sometimes for decades, for the right conditions to emerge again. For Sarah, those conditions were about to arrive in the most unexpected form, not through a dramatic life change or a sudden burst of inspiration, but through a conversation with an artificial mind that would help her remember her own. Sometimes the path back to ourselves begins with a simple question typed into the digital void. The confrontation with her abandoned art supplies was more painful than Sarah had anticipated. Each dried brush, each cracked tube of paint felt like evidence of her failure to honor what had once been sacred to her. The voice of her inner critic, dormant for years, awakened with a vengeance. "You see? You've lost it. 20 years of not practicing, and you think you can just pick up where you left off? Look at this mess. You don't even remember how to hold a brush properly. Maybe you were never that good to begin with." The gap between her artistic memory and her current reality felt insurmountable. Her hands, once steady and sure, now trembled with uncertainty. The colors that used to flow intuitively now seemed foreign, uncooperative. Worse than the technical rust was the emotional paralysis, the fear that she had waited too long, that the window for creative expression had closed forever. The traditional paths back to art felt wrong. She wasn't a beginner, but she wasn't current either. She existed in an uncomfortable liminal space, too experienced for basic instruction, too rusty for advanced practice. The art world seemed to have moved on without her, embracing new techniques, new technologies, new ways of seeing that felt alien to her traditional training. In desperation, she turned to the one place that didn't judge her past or her present, the neutral, patient space of artificial intelligence. It felt almost silly, asking a machine about something as human as creativity. But traditional sources of help felt too loaded with expectation, too quick to categorize her as either a beginner or a failure. What she didn't expect was for this digital conversation to become the beginning of the most profound creative awakening of her life. The struggle to reconnect with abandoned creativity is not new to the human experience. It echoes through time in the stories of those who lost their way and found it again. Consider the tale of two artists from the time of the Buddha, a story that speaks to the heart of creative resurrection. There were two painters who came to study under a renowned master. The first was young, technically skilled, and supremely confident in his abilities. He painted quickly, decisively, with bold strokes that commanded attention. His work was immediately recognizable as competent, even impressive. The second painter was older, returning to art after many years away. Her hands shook slightly as she held the brush. Her first attempts were tentative, uncertain. She mixed colors hesitantly, made marks, and then painted over them, started canvases, and abandoned them. To any observer, she appeared to be the lesser artist. The young painter, observing her struggles, felt a mixture of pity and superiority. "Master," he said to their teacher, "why do you spend so much time with her? She clearly lacks natural talent. Her technique is poor, her confidence non-existent. Surely your time would be better spent with students who show real promise." The master smiled gently. "Watch more carefully," he advised. "True artistry is not always found in confident strokes or perfect technique. Sometimes it emerges from the willingness to begin again, to embrace uncertainty, to paint not from ego but from necessity." As weeks passed, something remarkable began to happen. The older painter's technical skills slowly returned, but more importantly, her work began to carry something the younger painters lacked: depth, vulnerability, the weight of lived experience. Her paintings spoke of loss and recovery, of time's passage, of the preciousness of second chances. "You see," the master explained to his young student, "she paints not to prove her skill, but to reconnect with her soul. Her uncertainty is not weakness, it is honesty. Her struggle is not failure, it is courage. The years away from art have not diminished her. They have given her something to say." The master continued, "Technical skill can be learned by anyone with dedication. But the willingness to be vulnerable, to start again, to create from a place of authentic need rather than ego, this is the mark of a true artist. She has lived, suffered, grown, and now she brings all of that to her canvas. Her art is not just about painting, it is about being human." The young painter, humbled, asked, "But master, what about those of us who have never stopped practicing? How do we find that depth, that authenticity?" The master replied, "By remembering that technique serves expression, not the other way around. By painting not to impress, but to discover. By understanding that every moment offers the opportunity to begin again, to see with fresh eyes, to create from the heart rather than from habit." This ancient wisdom about the courage to begin again, about the value of vulnerability and creativity, was about to find new expression in Sarah's modern journey. Sometimes the most profound teachings come not from avoiding our struggles, but from embracing them as part of the creative process itself. The AI's response was unlike anything Sarah had expected. Instead of generic encouragement or overwhelming technical advice, it offered something different: permission to start imperfectly and a structured way to do so. "Your 20-year break doesn't erase your artistic foundation," the AI had written. "It's given you life experience that can deepen your work. Let's start with small, pressure-free experiments. What if you spent just 10 minutes tomorrow making marks on paper? Any marks, with any tool. No goals, no judgment, just the physical memory of creating." The simplicity of the suggestion was its genius. Sarah found herself at her kitchen table the next morning, pencil in hand, making marks on paper. Not trying to create art, just reconnecting with the physical act of mark making. Her hand remembered things her mind had forgotten: the weight of a tool, the texture of paper, the satisfaction of a line well drawn. Over the following days, Sarah found herself in an ongoing dialogue with the AI about creativity. She asked about color mixing. The AI reminded her of principles she'd once known and suggested simple exercises to rebuild her confidence. She worried about her shaky hands. The AI reframed this as an opportunity to develop a new, more expressive style. What surprised Sarah most was how the AI helped her reframe her relationship with imperfection. When she showed it a photo of a wobbly watercolor wash, instead of criticism, she received, "Look at how the colors flow into each other. There's a spontaneity here that rigid control could never achieve. What if this mistake became the foundation for something beautiful?" The AI became her patient creative partner, helping her document her progress, suggesting new techniques when she felt ready, and most importantly, helping her develop a practice of self-compassion around her creative journey. It didn't replace her artistic intuition, it helped her trust it again. Through the AI, Sarah discovered she wasn't alone in her journey. She learned about artists like Grandma Moses, who didn't start painting seriously until her 70s, and Louise Bourgeois, who found her most powerful artistic voice later in life. The AI helped her see her 20-year break not as lost time, but as life experience that could inform her art in ways her younger self never could have imagined. The transformation wasn't just technical, it was philosophical. With the AI's help, Sarah began to understand that her art didn't need to compete with her younger self's work or with contemporary artists who had never stopped practicing. Her art needed to be authentically hers, informed by her journey, honest about her struggles, and celebratory of her courage to begin again. The AI had done something remarkable. It had helped Sarah remember that creativity isn't about perfection or even consistent practice. It's about the willingness to express what's inside you, to play with possibilities, to trust the process even when you can't see the outcome. Her 20-year break hadn't killed her artist's soul. It had simply given it time to mature. True creative practice, Sarah was learning, wasn't just about the act of making art. It was about creating space for art to emerge. This meant not just physical space, but mental and emotional space as well. With the AI's guidance, Sarah developed what she came to think of as creative rituals, small practices that helped her transition from the busy world into the receptive state necessary for art making. She would sit quietly for a few minutes before painting, not to plan what she would create, but to simply arrive in the present moment. The AI had taught her something crucial. Creativity thrives in spaciousness, not pressure. Instead of trying to make up for 20 lost years in a few intense sessions, Sarah learned to work in sustainable rhythms. Paint for an hour, then sit with what she'd created. Try a new technique, then let it integrate before moving on. She began using the AI as a reflective partner, sharing images of her work not for critique, but for deeper understanding. "What do you notice about the colors I'm drawn to?" she might ask. Or, "How has my brushwork changed over these past weeks?" The AI helped her see patterns in her creative choices that she might have missed, deepening her self-awareness as an artist. Time became her ally rather than her enemy. Sarah discovered that her mature perspective brought gifts to her art that her younger self couldn't have accessed. She painted with the patience of someone who had learned that not everything needed to be rushed, the wisdom of someone who had experienced loss and recovery, the gratitude of someone who had been given a second chance at what she loved. The AI continued to support her practice, but increasingly, Sarah found herself trusting her own instincts. The digital mentor had done its job, not by replacing her artistic judgment, but by helping her remember and trust it. She still consulted the AI when she felt stuck or wanted to explore new techniques, but the core of her practice now came from within. What emerged was more than just a return to painting. It was a return to a way of being that honored both creation and contemplation, both effort and ease, both the wisdom of experience and the freshness of beginner's mind. Sarah's journey back to her artistic soul raises profound questions that extend far beyond painting. In a world that often tells us we're too old to start again, too rusty to return to abandoned dreams, too late to reclaim what we once loved, her story offers a different narrative. What parts of yourself have you abandoned not because you stopped loving them, but because life convinced you there wasn't room for them? What creative impulses lie dormant, waiting not for perfect conditions, but for permission to be imperfect? And in an age where artificial intelligence is often seen as a threat to human creativity, Sarah's story suggests a different possibility. What if technology could become not a replacement for human expression, but a bridge back to it? What if the very tools we fear might diminish our humanity could actually help us reclaim it? How might your own creative soul be waiting for you to remember where you left it? And what unexpected allies might be ready to help you find your way back? Inspired by Sarah's journey back to her artistic soul? Whether you're reconnecting with a long-abandoned creative practice or simply curious about how mindfulness and technology can support creative expression, we invite you to explore further. Subscribe to the Noble Wisdom Path for more stories and practices that bridge ancient wisdom with modern life. Find resources for creative awakening, guided meditations for artists, and a community of people exploring mindful creativity in our complex world. Share your own creative journey in the comments below. Have you ever abandoned a creative practice and found your way back? What role has technology played in your creative life? Your story adds to our collective understanding of what it means to create, to grow, and to begin again. Remember, your creative soul doesn't disappear when neglected. It simply waits for the right moment to emerge again. Thank you for joining us on the Noble Wisdom Path. May your own journey be filled with discovery, courage, and the joy of creating from the heart.